The Chinese government will, as always, encourage and support entrepreneurs in their undertakings and endeavors, and continue to foster a market-oriented, world-class business environment governed by a sound legal framework. With arms wide open, we warmly welcome enterprises from around the world to invest in China, deepen your roots in China, develop alongside China, and work with us for a better future. To conclude, I wish this annual meeting a full success. Thank you.
That was the Chinese Premier Li Qiang there speaking at the World Economic Forum that's underway in Tianjin today. I think really the key elements that came out of that, or one of the key elements, is really Beijing continuing to project that image of stability. And we have seen that since President Trump came back into office on January 20, that China is pledging to be a firm, a steady leader on the global stage.
Yeah, certainly he mentioned pretty early on in the speech about the road to a trade recovery is not smooth in the past years as well. And, the economic and trade system is becoming more diverse. But as you mentioned, right, there's also this push for innovation, for tech. I think when you mentioned the line about encouraging and supporting entrepreneurs, sharing globally original technologies, I think that's quite interesting too, what we heard from them.
Yeah, and you're really getting to this point now that the AI race is not just about sort of competition around specific AI tools, but it's about competition of who is going to have control of the standards and the governance and the broader infrastructure as well. And so you see this very direct push from the US, but you also hear that there from China, saying that they want to be able to share their innovation on a global stage as well. But let's get more on this now. Bring in our China correspondent Min Min Lo joining us. So Min Min, what stood out to you?
Yeah, I think, as you said, one of the points that stood out is how China is really reassuring the global public about the resilience of the Chinese economy. He says that China's growth is going to continue to underpin global growth regardless of whatever happens in the external environment. As China has proven before, they were always able to bring positive growth despite the shocks we have seen in the previous years. And in contrast to the United States, while he hasn't named U.S. specifically, but when it comes to, some of the dividends that China has gained when it comes to its investments in high-tech R&D. He talked about sharing the fruits of these developments with the rest of the world, keeping things open source, sharing original technologies with the rest of the world. The second thing that stood out to me was he mentioned the importance of engaging with all countries on an equal basis. And again, he didn't refer to the U.S. specifically, but this was something that China had repeatedly mentioned in terms of how they want to engage with the U.S. when it comes to trade negotiations, doing it on an equal basis. He talked about all the challenges, right? The decoupling that we are seeing, the fragmentation that we're seeing, erosion of these global multilateral institutions that are being replaced by a rise in regional and bilateral trade agreements. And he talked about the importance of, continuing to work towards this win-win cooperation. And he highlighted in particular the opportunities in the global south. And again, this highlights China's strategy. If you look at China's trade, especially after the tariffs had kicked in, China's exports to the UK, for example, has surged by a lot. China's exports to the rest of the world has also increased. In fact, the main decline in exports was only to the United States. It shows that the demand for Chinese goods, while the US is reducing its demand on Chinese goods, all that demand is just shifting elsewhere. It's not disappearing. It also shows you the resilience of these Chinese exporters. That's one of the things that really struck me when I speak to Chinese exporters, is how resilient they are because of the intense competition in China. They are forced to be so nimble, and they have gotten through the first trade war, they've gotten through the pandemic, and they are now trying to get through the second trade war by shifting very quickly, offering discounts, finding new markets overseas, and that's what China is saying it's able to do.